Hello, everyone. Are you guys ready? Yes? Okay, so I'm Clara, and I'm a venture capital investor. I'm very, very pleased to be moderating this panel today. We are very, very lucky to have the speaker here. So this is with great pleasure that we welcome Alexandre Viros, CEO of Oui.Sncf.
Hello.
Hello. Carlo Purassanta, President of Microsoft France.
Good afternoon.
And Azmat Yusuf, founder and CEO of Citymapper.
Thank you for having me.
So maybe first, can you please introduce yourself and what your company does? You go with.
Okay, so I work
up to you.
Okay, well, I'm the head of everything digital at SNCF. So SNCF operates trains, but I guess everybody knows that. And what we do at the digital SNCF is we have Oui.Sncf, which sells train tickets, Rail Europe, which sells European train tickets to non-Europeans, and our SNCF Assistant, which is a mobility as a service app, which we've relaunched 3 months ago. And to do all of that, we have a digital factory, and this is what we do at Oui.Sncf.
Okay, so, well, Microsoft is a great platform company that has changed quite a bit in the last 5 years. And I'm happy to be part of this adventure. I joined the company 9 years ago when, well, before actually the transformation started. So I'm very happy of being part of this adventure. I was part of consulting when I joined. Then I went to Italy, which is my home country. I've been managing the subsidiary there for 5 years. And I came back a couple of years ago because I wanted to stay in Europe and help the transformation of so many of our clients and ISVs and startups, and so contribute to the ecosystem of a country. That's what I like.
Right.
I'm Azmat, founder, CEO of Citymapper. We have a consumer mobility application that helps you get from A to B on all public and private transportation services. I started the company in London, but before London, I actually went to school at INSEAD in France, and I went to Paris and was completely and utterly lost, which I think is sometimes the point of Paris, is to get completely and utterly lost. But I felt back then, this is like 10 years ago, I hope someone at some point figures out how to solve this mess of the complexity of moving around cities. So much as the company was started in London, the inspiration also came from Paris.
Excellent. So Paris is definitely a good city to start a business, or at least to have the idea to start a business. So you are all leaders in your respective category. Voyageur houses a full range of digital capabilities. Citymapper is a leading city transit app, and Microsoft, a global computer technology company, helping, between other things, startups to grow their customer and revenue base. How do you manage to innovate constantly to stay or become the leader of your category within the ongoing digital revolution? And maybe starting with SNCF, which is a 80-year-old company. So how did you do it?
Yeah, it's an 80-year-old company, and what we do in digital, we've been doing it for 20 years. So it's a really good question, because right now, if you look at our digital revenue, it's 4.7 billion euros last year. So it's the biggest website in France. And how do we stay strong and innovative when we're this big? Well, first of all, we keep on investing in innovation. So that comes through the amounts of money we put on the table each year, which is dozens of millions of euros, approximately 100 million euros that we invest in tech on those different assets each year. And if we need to grow, well, we can scale really fast. We keep on hiring. I decided to hire 150 people last year just on tech. Right now we have 150 people in AI. So I think investment is one thing that's important to us. And that shows how invested we are, actually. Second thing is, how do we stay connected to the startup ecosystem through either incubation or acceleration, but actually as one of the main clients or customers of the startups? And third, how do we operate? And I think that's going to be a big change in the next few years. How do we function with the rest of ecosystem, including the big tech companies, and not against them or not just using them as you know, a commodity, and how do we build a partnership?
Interesting. And what about Microsoft going from a very traditional business to the cloud and many other services?
Well, it was not traditional when it was born, actually.
True.
It's a 45 years old company. It was a revolution at the time because it was probably the first software company. I mean, Bill Gates is the one that invented kind of the startup based on IP on software. And then we are a company with only 3 CEOs. So we have Bill, we had Steve Ballmer for a while, and then now Satya. And it's amazing because if you see what happened in the stock market, we were like going up and up and up until 95, until Windows 95, people queuing in front of the shops to buy, you know, the CD-ROM to install it. And then we had, from a P&L perspective, with Steve, a lot of growth. So the business model, everybody, you know, just looking at the P&L would say, this is a sound business model, this is fantastic. But actually, there was no perception of where was the innovation, what is really new. And that's what Satya has been able to change in just 5 years, which in a cycle for such a big company is quite astonishing, actually. And seeing it from the inside and seeing how fast the culture in the company is changing, the behavior of the people from a sales perspective, but also from an engineering perspective. When you say to 45,000 people, maybe you believe you are the biggest software writer company, but you know what? You're going to change the way you do it, and how fast this goes, it's pretty amazing. It doesn't mean that it's done. We believe we are not even at the middle of the transformation, but we became a platform company. We became, you know, we are partnering with all our competitors, basically. So Salesforce, Oracle, VMware. I was on stage yesterday with VMware. Everything works with Azure, and we work with startups. We buy GitHub, so it's a totally different company. So it requires, you need to be humble, first of all, have appetite to put your core at stake and bet your future on something that is not your core. That's super difficult to do. And then, of course, it's a question of talent and the capability of everyone to be part of something which is really different. So you need to question yourself actually daily. Am I still good to be at this company? What can I do to transform myself? Because the company is going fast in a market that is going fast. So maybe I need to create new habits for myself. And this is really new at the company.
So a strong vision and also a culture that is spread out all across the teams, and then also the ability to partner with external players.
Absolutely.
All right. And what about you? So you started off, so it's a bit different, but...
Yeah, I mean, we have a great product, not yet a great company like my colleagues here, but started out with solving a problem, which was the complexity of navigating a city, but specifically at the start of the mobile era. So we started the company about 6-7 years ago, and back then there was an opportunity to take the mobile device and reimagine how you would think of understanding and using your city. And apart from the mobile trend, the other interesting one has been open data, and the fact that we can take that to redesign and reinvent how we think navigation should happen. So we said, let's look at this blank slate. You're on mobile. How do you think about design for a journey planner? How do you think about routing in the age of open data, in the age of real-time data? Even the idea of going from A to B is completely reinvented. And frankly, the innovation opportunities haven't stopped. It wasn't as if we just built the initial product and found that we were done and it's finished. And even this past year, there have been all these private modes of transport. And in Paris, it's incredibly pronounced. You have all these scooters, mopeds, cycles, all these different brands. And so again, we've been changing how we think about routing, integrating all these different players, because navigation is changing. It used to be that you would just take a metro to get around Paris, and now suddenly you've got all these competing options, and you want to compare them in terms of time, cost, availability. So for us, innovating in this category doesn't really look like it's going to stop. We still have all the way to go to autonomous until whenever that happens, and it's just a fundamental human need, getting from A to B.
Yeah, you took a very simple use case, but you turned it into a global business. How did you do it, and how do you manage to adapt? Because local transport are not the same in London and in Paris, for example. So how do you manage to go global?
Yeah, I definitely believe it is something you have to think of on a city-by-city basis. And I think that is lost in some alternative approaches which treat the entire world in one singular way. We find you have to focus on a city in order to get it absolutely right. And in Paris, we've done a lot of things very specific to Paris. Actually, a really good example is on
the Macron.
Well, throwing Macron out of hell was one, but maybe a better example would be on Friday. There was, which I think was probably one of the biggest strikes in Paris history for many years. And we didn't treat it like just an algorithm. We specifically made an effort to understand exactly what was going on and managed the entire network on Friday to give people the best understanding of what is on strike, what is not, what's running, what's not. And as a result, I think we probably had our biggest day ever just in terms of helping people get around. And to me, I mean, it's such a good feeling to, you know, help a city in this circumstance when people really need it. And so whenever we can, we try to treat a city as its own, try to understand exactly the characteristics of mobility and do what is necessary in that city.
Okay. So you either created a new market or appeared in one where we wouldn't expect you. And what do you think is a common ground between all the three businesses, all your three businesses? What would be, in your sense, the common ground?
Well, I think what we have in common is that we really try to start where there's a need, exactly what you were mentioning. So you were talking about the complexity of a city. We realized on the SNCF side that there's actually a more general complexity of mobility, and that our job is not just, you know, building infrastructure as it has been and still is, but we need to actually go from transportation to mobility and not just use, you know, train cars or move them around, but we're actually moving people. And I think, so starting from the client, looking what technological opportunities we can use to make their lives easier, and also, as you were saying, Carlo, is understanding that we probably don't have, we don't know what the next big innovation will be. So, you know, we started as a desktop company, and then when there was mobile, I remember a lot of people were making fun of the mobile business, saying, well, it'll never, you know, it'll never be big. And today there's cemeteries full of companies that never went mobile. We have the same thing today when we're talking about data. Some take it seriously, some others don't. So you need to have this, you know, you need to have enough confidence to try new things, and you need to not have enough humility to understand that you probably don't know what will be the next thing. So I think that's something we definitely have in common.
Yeah, I totally agree. The way I call it is, I believe we all are in this room people with a passion for solving equations. Not from a mathematical standpoint, although maybe some of you are mathematicians, but the thing is, digital technology, all the assets that we have, is a fantastic opportunity. And because we are passionate about it, we know what we can do with it, and we see opportunities or problems, and we can invent ways to solve equations that maybe other people don't see. I think that's the beauty of tech. And whether you do it with 12 people or with 12,000 people, it's the same job. Is what is the thing you want to solve, and what are the opportunities that you have in a large tool set of clouds, of AI, of machine learning. Everything is possible if you really want to solve an equation. And I think that, you know, when we think about France, Europe, and the world, there are so many equations still to be solved. We're talking here in particular about the experience of going in a place, going on vacation, going to work, and so on. And it's still a problem. So for sure, still a lot to do to improve that. But think about how many equations can be solved. We want to live better, we want to live more, we want to be better education for everyone, we want to have better food for everyone. There is still this equation that, for me, I'm super passionate about it. 2050 is in just a few years from now. We're going to be 9 billion people, and nobody knows how we're going to feed them. So that is an equation that we need to solve. So tech is a tool. It's never, I hope it will never be something that is managing people. We need to manage the tools. But we need to be able to find new equations to solve and then solve them. And this is the community that can do it, and working together, because it's very difficult to do everything on our own. So the reason why a day like this is beautiful is that there are a lot of opportunities. The three of us, and you as well, we have opportunities probably with all of you. If we can identify what we can do better, each one of us, with each one of you, then it's what I call the platform-to-platform richness, because you have solved an equation that I was not able to do, and then together we solve a bigger equation, and we have an added value that is going to create a new experience. So it's beautiful.
And because your companies are very big, how do you spot this innovation? Do you have dedicated team within your group, or is it spread across the business unit?
So we do have an innovation cell that's really trying to be as avant-garde as they can be, but we also want the culture to diffuse. So everybody in the company will have specific time if they want to work on innovation, or as well we have hackathons or creativity marathons and so on and so forth to make sure that people stay connected to the network. Another thing is the work we do with startups. We work with, I said, approximately 100 startups. And there's one thing we don't want, which is startup washing, which is what a lot of companies do. Saying they they work with startups, but they don't really do anything with that, and that we don't do. So we try to have a different approach. I think actually being a big client of startups, as much as accelerating them, is something that helps us be very innovative. So there's I think a lot of we promote using new startup, trying new things. We're very proud and very happy to be the first users of many startups. So that's something that's in the culture where we promote audacity, if I may, at SNCF, which is not necessarily what people think about, but that's true. So this is something we do.
Okay.
So at Microsoft, we built, especially in France, a dedicated team. I'm going to say how it works, but before that, so first of all, Microsoft is a very ecosystem-driven company. So we have always sold through partners. So with big, large system integrators or small players, we have 30 years of experience in every country. Then a few years back, we started working with ISVs. Because of this cloud motion and Azure coming and other clouds coming, we said, okay, well, you are an ISV, you're doing software. Why don't you build on the cloud and then you go faster and you scale? And that is working super well. So now we started a few years ago, and in France we have a new team. Anthony and Karen are somewhere here. There, Anthony, raise your hand. So this team is, first of all, is the second best team in terms of activity after the United States, which I'm proud of. And what we do actually is we apply the same model as we do for ISVs to startups. So for an ISV, it means that we have a strategy which is called third party equal first party. So as soon as a producer of IP works on Azure, we co-sell with this company exactly like if it was Microsoft. Our people, so all our sales teams, are incented and motivated to sell together with the ISVs. So we said, well, let's do with the startups exactly the same. It's even a bigger opportunity for them because actually they are smaller and more recent business. So the fact of being with Microsoft and opening doors together, it creates a credibility and, a fast go-to-market that is really great to see. And for example, in the next 40 that we've seen published today, I'm very happy to see Wind, United Credit, Shift Technology, Talentsoft, all these companies are companies. Yeah, so it means that we go to a client and we say, yeah, we are Microsoft, and you have, I don't know, an HR opportunity or a credit opportunity. Look, well, not only we have our three clouds, but we have partners. And this is a great door, I think.
Okay, because we are running out of time, maybe one last question for you, Azmat. What do you see could be the next disruption for you and Citymapper? Or maybe there isn't and you just want to expand more into more cities, but or do you see another use case?
Yeah, I mean, so first, I never like the word disruption because it feels like you're breaking stuff. Well, we like to think that we're fixing stuff, and hopefully what we're doing is making existing systems work better, which is what we do.
Yep.
And then in terms of trying to predict the next one, I think if any of us knew exactly what that would be, we would be very busy doing it. And I think we're all fascinated by tech and always surprised by what comes along. I don't think I could have predicted as much as, about mobility, that there would be so many different scooters on the street of Paris right now. It didn't exactly feel as if that was the greatest technological advancement that we were going to come up with. But on the other hand, this is why it's so hard, because it's still, you can solve problems in so many different ways by taking consumer needs and technology. I'd say if I can, we have launched a ticketing product in London, which is phenomenal, which works on the back of contactless. So my hope for Paris specifically is that the ticketing infrastructure improves, because right now you can buy trains tickets all across France just with your mobile device. But in Paris, you have to get these paper tickets, which are really quite terrible. Maybe it's for tourists and the locals have Navigo, but still, I really hope that the biggest tourist city in the world can figure out a better way than those paper tickets for people to go along. And I think if that happens and you can do all this on mobile, it'll be great for the city. And I would look forward to that.
We're working on it.
Okay.
Excited.
Well, thank you very much all. It was very interesting. I think that being a leader or a builder from scratch, you are against all odds and tides. And I like the sentence of fixing existing things and not maybe disrupting everything. But you either have to create a market no one had been built before, or reinvent yourself like you are doing constantly. And I think this is very impressive. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Secrets lie in the border fires and the humming wires. Yeah, man, you know you're never coming back. Past the square, past the bridge, past the mills, past the stacks. On a gathering storm comes a tall, handsome man in a dusty black coat with a red right hand.
For the music to stop. Hi everyone. I'm gonna leave the guys and girls that up, maybe sit down please, and give a warm applause to 3 huge company, Daniel, Thomas, and Andreas, please, huge applause. So when we were working on the panel, the first topic was conquering Europe. And I called some of those guys and they told me, Europe. Okay, but why not the world? So that's why we changed a little bit, because those guys are really no limits in terms of ambition. So I'm gonna let them introduce themselves, maybe just few words on what the company is doing, and 2 figures, whatever you want.
So, hey together, thanks for having me. I'm Daniel, one of the co-founders of Flixbus. Usually in Europe pretty well known. What we do is we move people from A to B, mainly in buses, but not only anymore. The company has been established in 2013, and what I can say about the last funding round, which happened this year, the press says it used to be above €500 million, and it's not so wrong what it's written. So quite some money to really conquer the world, as you said.
Thank you.
Wonderful. My name is Andreas, and I'm working for a real young startup. We were founded in 1946. Axel Springer used to be Europe's largest print publisher. You know the stuff when you read news on a paper, remember? In 2006, we had 1% digital. Today, we have over 80% digital. And we just, unlike a lot of startups who rush to get public, we are now in the process to go the other way around. We want to go private. We have teamed up with KKR, who has put up the modest amount of 4 billion to help us to take private, and we are hopefully on the way to achieve that successfully.
Thank you.
And I'm Thomas from Miro. Miro, it's a company trying to change the way creatives works, starting with photographers and videographers, with solutions and tools and stuff like that. It's a 3 years-ish old company. We fundraised close to $300 million, and we are close to 1,000 employees now.
Thank you. So 2 different types of company. You went almost created a long time ago, very successful one and public for now, and 2 private company created and headquartered both in Germany and France. Maybe the first question, there is a lot of entrepreneur in this room. Maybe share a couple tips about how you go from 0 to 1. 1 meaning where you are right now, raising a lot of money or going IPO. In terms, first, I guess everybody is asking, in terms of people, how you go from 0 to 1,000 people and more, in terms of culture, in terms of sharing people tips, in terms of management, how you deal with this. Do you have any tips to share with the audience now?
Well, I can tell you what is tougher, to go from 14,000 to 8,000 people, because that's what we did the other way around, but I hope you never have to do that. What I'd like to tell you, because you will most likely at one point sell your company, and so you might be bought by a company like ours, and other than the amount of the check you're looking for, if you want to stay involved, I think it is super important that you really challenge your new owners. What we have been very, very adamant about is that it is not the big company that needs to adjust to the small startup, but it's the other way around. We have to become more like our startup companies in the beginning. Now we are a digital company ourselves. And we had, in the beginning, one very simple rule to all of our corporate guys who all wanted to play with the new toy that was just acquired: do not touch them, go never see them. There is just one person who will contact with them, and when they are big enough, they will show you how you do business and not the other way around. So that was for us very, very important. So if you pick your corporate partner, not only look at the check size, if you want to stay involved, look for the true culture.
So when we build up the company until today, I don't know, it's more than 1,300 people across in almost 20 offices. And most importantly, well, it's about the market. Germany alone was not large enough, so we started quickly after in Italy and especially also in France. And we obviously looked about local teams, because as a consumer brand, you have to understand your customer, and that does only work very well if you have local teams. So this is important. And of course, if you're a founder and you grow and become like a real manager, you have to delegate stuff. What we delegated last was to hire and also, to a certain extent, fire people. So this is something where I'm still certainly engaged, because this is so important in order to keep the culture up, the culture you've set up in the early days.
Yeah, I agree. But anyway, I think for most of your questions, the answer will be hire the good people. Right. If you don't go from 1 to 1,000, you go from 1 to 3, and then to 3 and 3 of each. And so if you hire the culture is basically usually the mindset of the CEO in a way, right? So that's why we all have different companies, because we're not the same. And so if you really see as an important topic to take the good, maybe the first tech guys, the first tech guys, they will also take guys that look like them, and at the end you can be 1,000 and 200,000. At the end, they all will look alike, and I think that's a good way to do it.
Gotcha. Okay, in terms of team, we got it. In terms of you're all European company, either from Germany or France. What was the first country you ask yourself, or you tell yourself, okay, we have to expand there, and why? Did you guys deal with the fragmented European market or go directly to the US? What was the strategy at the end?
So for us, mobility is across the entire world almost a very regulated environment. So it was not only about what is a cool market or a large market, it was also about where we had the ability to start. And shortly after Germany, that was in Italy and France. And yes, of course, the US was liberated, so good for us to go already. But you're better to, look closer first, just because it's more difficult to manage such a subsidiary so far abroad, rather than going to Milan or Paris. This is easy.
This is what you said. Maybe Thomas, you can handle on this, because when I call you, the company, to ask you about the European market, you told me that you have just one office in Europe, which is in Paris. But
it's not me who said that. But
yeah. But all the other offices are abroad, outside Europe. So what was the strategy behind?
We have a weird play, because it's like we have a supply to manage, right? And so we can have one office and be operating in 50 countries,
right?
Which was the case at the beginning. So basically, we're operating with the blue sheets, from Paris, 24 hours a day, doing photo shoots in Australia and in Peru. And then we realized that there were more shoots there, and so you open offices according to the. But well, anyway, at the beginning, when you're the first year, because we went a bit fast at opening offices, you could go to any country you want. It's a shit show because you don't have the money, you don't know how to do it. So at the end of the day, you do it badly. We started very softly with Belgium, Switzerland stuff. They speak French, it's very easy. But then the real first country we put an office in was the US, because of the European market. It's very fragmented. So if you want to open in terms of size of market, if you want to open in Europe, Spain, Germany, England, Nordics and stuff, you have to change your website in every language. It's a complete nightmare. In the back office, in the front office and stuff. You have tax problem, you have so many stuff. You go to the US, so it's a bit costly, but then you put one office, it's just one game land, so you just go. So if you have a bit of cash and you happen to be sometime kind of the first one doing this, so you don't have any competitor, it's a good place to start.
So it means that there were no competitors in the US doing exactly what you're done.
Yeah, because often we copycat a company that already exists, right? Like a lot of SaaS already exists there, or we go there and you already have 14 companies already there with the mindset, with the culture and stuff. And it gets complicated. If you happen to sometimes be the first one, then the market is so much bigger that it's way easier. So.
Thanks, Andreas.
I have one important lesson for startups, and not only for startups, for all companies, which I've seen go wrong a lot of times, is be first really very good at scale in one market.
Right.
And if you really are good at that, then go international, but only also one market at a time, because each market is new, and only because you have succeeded once doesn't mean you'll succeed a second time. And they are just as smart people and as big a competitor in the second market as in the third and in the fourth. And we have wasted a lot of money and energy by being so excited about our great model or our partners or founders model, and went all the way international, and then it costs really dearly. And if you do that mistake in the US, it costs even 10 times that much. So be really very, very strong about it, not to go too fast international and take every market as if it were your first one.
Thank you. Maybe about a bit of context about your financial strategy. You went for an IPO, now you're going back to private, and you two guys have raised more than between 300 and more than $500 million. How does this happen? How did you choose to do this? What was the strategy behind your financial one?
So as long as we still, I think it's called hypergrowth, we quite take some risks. Because I agree with what Thomas said, but you have to take risks. And risk is usually not in favor of a public market scenario. So therefore we were very happy that we've been able to do financing rounds in a private way, because this gives us a close and trusted relationship with our investors, and therefore we have the freedom to try out new means of transportation, in our case, to try out new countries, and to not be public on a quarterly basis and have to explain everything, even though some moonshots to the audience, which sometimes is difficult, and it really will hit your strike price, your share price, and that could be dangerous for instance, takeover scenarios. And now we're on the financing side in a very safe environment. At the same time, in addition to having funding, we always aimed to be break even as fast as possible, because that gives you also some independency, and we're really good with that. And if at some point in time we may need money which is not available in a private round, then an IPO could be an option.
Okay. Not a trade sale.
No. So trade sale perspective, it depends on the founder. I think I founded the company in order to run it, because Flixbus has a real impact in terms of mobility, literally moving people. And trade sale usually means, if you start working for a corporate, I did that already. I worked for a corporate already, and there is reasons why I founded my own company, and I would like to continue. So I don't think a trade sale is a real option for us.
Looking for freedom.
Freedom, exactly.
Well, I have to contradict that, obviously, because we have founders that are still co-owners of our businesses that we acquired over, I think the first one now was like Idealo 13, 14 years ago. And one of the founders is still active, still core shareholder, and he enjoys the freedom of his entrepreneurship and the additional freedom of a big company helping him, for instance, in fight against Google and things, which sometimes bigger corporations that not only have more firepower, but also perhaps a more relevant voice can help. So I'm sure there's a lot of bad examples, but there's also some good ones.
What about you?
I do agree with Daniel. No, but most of the time...
You haven't worked with us yet.
Most of the time when
you're
you're
all
bought
looking
out,
for freedom, no problem.
well, everyone who anyway sells that, like 2 years afterwards or like 1 year, they go out of the company. It's very frequent, at least.
Yeah.
Because you're not really the owner anymore, so you say something, they have a kind of a boss saying the other way, and so it's a bit annoying. Me, I'm not trying to be a break-even, to be frank, not yet. Like I don't see it in the foreseeable future. I'm trying to be to have good economics per unit, right? Then I always have the impression that the market is so big that if I am break-even, it's like I could invest more in other things. It's a super big market. It's a bit different than yours, I guess. So I'm not trying to do that, which means that I might need some liquidity soon again. Yeah,
you've just raised 230 million.
Yeah, but first we do many things. But like the thing you're gonna read in the newspaper is like 1/3 of the business, which is like on-demand photography. It's really 1/3. It's like close to $100 billion industry, and we are really like the first one on it. So we are really far from doing 1% of the revenue of it. So you can see yourself growing quite fast. And in terms of operation and sales, it takes some money. So if you want to really have an impact on it, you can push it quite far. Doesn't mean you need to burn, but you need to control it. But so we might need liquidity in 3 years-ish. And the question is, do we do it privately? So do we fundraise again, or do we do it publicly? It's a question between investors and the board and yourself as a founder. Because if you go private, you get diluted another time. But you own the company kind of, because you still have a board member. If you go public, you do not get, in a way, diluted, because at least that's the last part of the road. But then you have pressure from the public. I'm sure that's why. Which is, I've met like maybe 20 CEOs that went public at some point, and they're all quite sad in their life. So, so it's kind of another job. You get to be a PR guy that's just trying to have not the London traders saying something bad for you, like on a Monday morning, and then it goes down, and you have everyone calling. So it's a different job.
So Andres, you're a PR guy, right?
You get
well, no, actually, I'm not a PR guy. That's why we want to go private now. But I think what is really important is you have to pick the type of investor that's right for you, and if it is then public or private or a so-called strategic investor, that's secondary. Frankly, if you don't own your company 100% anymore, then you are not an independent founder anymore. You have debt or you have other investors, and these investors can be analysts. They can, represented by analysts. They can be a strategic partner, or they can be VCs. And frankly, I've seen so many startups who really needed to struggle to make the next financing round and then justify the super returns that the VCs wants to get. Sometimes, and it goes wrong very often, I totally agree, because strategic partners handle most of the startups very stupidly. But I think it can be a very wise choice to do that if it's done right. For us, we wanted to go private, not because we don't like public per se, but we had the wrong investors.
Right.
We had EBITDA dividend-driven investors, and you are kind of born with these investors. Amazon made it much smarter. They went public. Jeff Bezos went public on a story. We are still in day one. Don't expect profits, expect growth.
Yes.
That's the perfect story to go public, and then you get the growth investors who also exist in public markets. We unfortunately 30 years ago went public with a story. You get dividends every year. You get quarterly earning growth every quarter. And that we cannot deliver anymore because we also want to be cool with these guys now and be able to invest in the long run.
One remark on that, which is very true. So actually, you're like pretty soon not free anymore. I realized, okay, you dedicate yourself to the customers and they dictate what you have to do, not yourself. That's the first thing. The second thing, you're right on, choose the right investors. And many people think if they sell parts of their company, even getting below 50%, it's not their company anymore. It depends on the investor. And at some point in time, freedom is a perception. If you're free to act or no, so it's not reflected in the shares actually anymore.
Maybe in terms of growing strategy, two type of company again. One company that is based on acquisition a lot. You've done a bunch of acquisition at Axel Springer, and two companies that are growing kind of organically. Have you thought about buy company to grow, for going elsewhere, for going to the US, like you guys?
So for us, it's in between. We always look at the markets where we want to go to and then decide what is the right strategy. And recently we've taken over the market leader in Turkey, Kamil Koç, a company even older as Axel Springer, I think. And that was a clear M&A deal, as we did also in Poland, for instance. It depends. If there are countries where there is no clear market leader, we obviously also start greenfield. It totally depends on what the market demands, and that is what we do in order to be the market leader as fast as possible.
Okay.
And I don't have the same money as Axel Springer. It's a very different strategic trying to take the whole kind of industry with buying. Anyway, and you bought out Meilleur Argent, I think. It's not, yeah, on classified and stuff, so trying not like to put everything on the same bucket, like a constellation of something. Us, we don't have a lot of people to buy. I could buy Adobe, but it's a bit expensive for me. So
you can raise it.
I can raise a bit. So it's difficult. There is some guys on the tech, we're doing a lot of AI on the image. But again, we like today we're screening around 20 companies as we speak, and there's not so many guys that really fit.
Okay.
So we might buy out a few companies soon from now, but need to be really picky on it.
Okay.
I mean, I think in all, again, it really doesn't depend on what type of company you are. It depends on what market you're playing in, and there's markets probably like yours where winner takes all or winner takes most models are. And if you go to a market where there's already a winner, you should probably you're not well off to invest organically, unless you have the better product.
Right.
So like in the case, for instance, the real estate space where we own already Sologer, and Meilleur Argent is on the other side, finding sellers, the clear market leader. We thought it makes better sense to acquire them as well. But when we can grow our company, we have a job board business that we acquired when it had 60 people. Today it has 3,000 people, so 10 years later. So then we prefer to grow organically, because if you can grow organically, it's clearly the better efficient use of capital, and it's also more fun.
Right. We have 6 minutes. Maybe to go to a last question, a bit broader, about what is happening in Europe and in the world in general. We all seen what is happening with WeWork. Huge valuation, huge amount raised. We all asking ourselves when and at some point maybe something's gonna happen, because there's a lot of money, a lot of amount raised, huge valuations. What do you think about it? Is it a good sign and Europe is going straight forward and we have to keep going on it, or we have to take care of something?
The valuations are high on the tech side of the world. The thing is, some companies to have a better valuation, they try to say they're tech. So many ways to do that on the communication, on everything you're pushing. And so we work basically, they're trying to say, or they tried to say it was a tech company. But at the end, you can easily see that it's quite a leasing office company, right? With some community around it and blah, blah, blah. But actually, you know, and so when you see the difference between the Regus, valuation of Regus, doing I think 3 billions and like a bit and some profits, and we work doing less and of course losing money, at some point you can clearly see that something fake. So the question is, can the CEO convince the world that it's a tech company? So it's basically at the end quite the guy like selling the thing, like you can see with Elon Musk and stuff,
right?
And you get caught by the reality, sometimes before the IPO, sometimes after. But I don't think it's a bubble exploding. I think it's just we work, and maybe some others trying to say it's a tech company, when it's not a tech company. It's a bit different.
I totally agree with what Thomas said, and in addition, what you said earlier is important. For us, it was important to become break-even, but actually the core, the unit economics, are even more important. And that's especially more important than the actual valuation, because it's the foundation of it. And it seems, I mean, I didn't study it in detail, but it seems that the unit economics are not so good, or not hilariously better than of Regus. And then everybody is questioning, like, okay, why should I pay that amount? And the answer is, you better do not, I guess.
I think there's even, first of all, there's a little tip for those who seek office space. You should check out the incumbent, the old incumbent, the Regis, I don't know how you call it. They have actually now pretty cool offices, and for much lower prices, because they need to respond as well. And other than if it's a tech company or not a tech company, it's obviously not a real tech company. I don't see the network effects or scale effects that, for instance, a company like Flixbus has, where you are the only guy who can fill up a bus, and the guy who can't fill up the bus cannot make any money. And there is no scale in that. You can fill one office building, then you have to fill the second one, then you have to fill the third one, but there's no real network effect, because you just need one office space. So only for that reason, I don't really think that, despite the founder's genius, that the valuation is fully justified.
Thank you. We have 2 more minutes maybe for a couple questions. If there's some in the space, you have 3 unicorns in front of you, so please ask a question. If there's not a question to unicorns. Come on, guys and girls. No. Okay, I've asked all the questions. So no one has questions. I'm sorry for that, because they have this, you know, this capability to ask questions to unicorns, but still.
There's one.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I was told that you had that you met with Mr. Fabrice Grinda, who's a Miro, and who's a sort of super angel. And I was wondering I was trying to find a question. What was your feedback on that meeting and the work you did with him, because he became one of your investors?
So you want me to pinpoint
the good things?
The good things. Yes, Fabrice Grinda. It's a French guy. He's investing through a VC, which name I don't have anymore.
FJ Labs.
Yes, FJ Lab. Thank you very much. I should know that. Yeah, they entered on very early, like 3 years ago, putting in a few $100,000. Well, you know, there's a broader question, like, what can you expect from investors? At the end of the day, that you're the guy doing it, right? So when you have investors that worked in your industry before, Fabrice Grinda has worked in marketplaces. You can get some input, you know, sometimes some intros. They can help you recruit a bit. So that's what Fabrice did, but like every other VC also, right? Then that's it. You know. So it's really cool. Like sometimes you're looking for the CFO, and it comes from one of the VCs, and you could take a lot of time. And that's super great, right? Then you were about to do a big mistake, to make a big mistake on the economics of your marketplace, because you thought the supply was this and it's not that. And so they tell you that for 1 hour, and you get convinced, and you really avoid a big mistake. So it happens, but again, it's like they're out of the business, and they're not changing it. You at some point that you're working, so like Fabrice or something else. I love them too, but.
Hi, thank you very much for the time you took to explain us the business. I'm here with my brother, and we actually quit our job 10 days ago. We love each other, we want to start working together, we're actually doing it, but we don't have a project. What should we do?
Two answers. First, it's risky to work with your what do you like to do? First, you like product, you like sports, you like, but let's say you like tech. Let's say it's okay. One cool thing would be to look at what's happening in China and the US. You see every seed fundraise like from 200K to 2 million, and you wonder if there's something to do in Europe. Sometimes it's a good way to find a product, right? Some friends in Germany have done that quite successfully with Rocket Internet. That's a good way. And then depending on what you want to do, you have good industries and bad industries in terms of the journey you want to have. If you want to get something global, looking for software is a good thing. So you go into a company, you see, try to see how the payment of the employees work, how the accounting work, how the comité entreprise works like that, and you see if there's only old softwares, maybe there's something to do with new UX. I guess could be two good ways to start looking for projects. But
I mean, I know that usually it's that the founders come with their ideas, but I've also seen there's some interesting models where you can go without having an idea yet. And actually, Fabrice has a very small program like that in his FJ Labs, where he hires every year. It's usually he hires out of school MBAs, and they work with him and get to learn all the other businesses, and then they have time to develop an idea, and then at the end pitch it, and either they are taken or not. There's also obviously accelerate. We have an accelerator program in Berlin together with Porsche in a joint venture, where usually people come with ideas, but sometimes also we have people who we take in who we like as a team, and then work together with them on developing an idea. I'm sure there's others as well. But you should obviously have, I don't know if one of you is the product guy and the other the tech guy, so you should definitely not have the same strength, but be complementary in your strength.
So aside of the infrastructure, which is around there, looking back, and we coincidentally happened to do mobility, we had no clue about that. What we learned is it's first about the market. Independent, you're supposed to be good at it and have a passion, but independent of what you do, look if the market is large enough. If it's not, just better don't do it. If you don't, you only sell the product to myself and to these two folks, you're done pretty quickly, right? So market has to be huge, and then you better sort out your relationship, because what is even more important than the idea itself is the founders team, and you really had to go along with each other very well for quite some time, I suppose.
Last question.
Thank you. I'm Duplex Camcam. I'm also entrepreneur. Sorry for my English. I would like to ask a question to Thomas. I am very impressed about what you did, what you're doing now with Miro. For me, it's one of the next biggest company in the world. I hope you. And I'm very impressed about what you did, because when I started entrepreneurship 3 years ago, all the VC, all the friend of Business Angel, when I see, they said to me, it's impossible to get and finance, to leverage the money when you are the only guys who is running the company. I saw your example. I am very impressed. I would like to know, how do you do for that? Today, I don't know, but I don't know if you have a co-founder, but all the time I say you are alone. And I would like to know exactly.
So you're alone?
Yeah, I'm a good salesman. So let's go back to WeWork. At the beginning, I was working in some part of Paris, just on a few real estate agencies and a few photographers. Could sound quite far from a cool business. No repeat, bad margins, kind of an agency of photography. So it's a nightmare. Like you don't raise money. But I've put some tech vision into it. And I went and saw the fact that we could process many things and have good economics and still help and go into a population of guys, the artists and the photographers, to help them do that through technology. And there was no one on it. So when I presented and kept presenting it on PowerPoint and on speeches and stuff, I was really like showing the big vision and where I wanted to go. And so I managed to get some investors to back me up, Rocket Internet first. by presenting it differently than what it really was at the time. A bit bullshit, a bit salesy, a bit, and so I caught up with my pitch and my vision with the passing of time. At the beginning, I was super far from it, and so it worked so far.
This was the last question. Thank you very much, and a huge applause to those unicorns.